Hey, it's Alex here with another episode of the Startup Secrets Show. Today, I'm very happy to be joined by Vikram Rajan, New York City-based CEO of VideoSocials.net. Vikram, how are you today?
I'm well, Alex. Thanks for having me on.
Excellent. So, we were talking on the show before, as you guys know, we do. He was telling me about all the great little things that he did, and I want to say great little things, as he did as a youth that kind of built the basis for his entrepreneurship journey. Selling little items from his house, going out and slanging Hubba Bubba. What he said it was the candy version of drugs. But as you look back at those experiences, are you able to see, or when you look back at yourself, were there pieces of your personality that you always knew or were set for entrepreneurship? And if there were, are there experiences in your life that might have pushed you in that direction, like the early stages there?
I think ultimately the entrepreneur wants to try things on his own or her own, and is willing to somewhat fail, willing to figure it out, is an inventor in some regard, is an artist in some ways, obviously a salesperson in other ways. And so that inventive spirit has always been there. One thing you kind of left out, I created games. So I would take pennies and put it in cassette boxes. And the whole concept was you have to just use your thumbs to flick the pennies and start creating patterns. I then convinced my parents to take me to a plastics manufacturing place and got a real box and got a little coin, plastic coins, and kind of replicated it in a larger version. And that's what I sold. But the original version, set of pennies, was basically cassette tape with 7 pennies. In some ways, less expensive to produce than actual plastic coins. I should have just stuck with the pennies. And so from that aspect, I was always inventing things.
Profit margins high.
Say that again?
Keeping those profit margins high. I like that.
Trying, keeping the costs low. So that inventive spirit has always been there, where I want to create something that the world hasn't seen. Sometimes that has its own downfalls and pitfalls, as I've seen. That sometimes it's okay to provide what people want and are used to or trendy. It doesn't need to be so clever and innovative where it's hard for people to really understand. So I've had to mitigate kind of both aspects of wanting to be very innovative and inventive and thus clever in the marketing aspect of it, but getting pulled towards something that's a little bit more of a commodity, but not getting commoditized, where then it's just price-based and you just kind of get beat up over that. And some people have a better business model around just purely, very slim profit margins. I'm a service practitioner. I don't really know that world so much. So for me, I've had to kind of bring both worlds together. And so we can go more in that detail if you'd like.
Oh my goodness, yes. And so one thing I gleaned from you there is you talked about not just creative, not just, pricing, not just materials, selling the product. There's so many pieces of entrepreneurship that you have to be at least decent at. Sure. And the skills that you acquire along the way. And so one of the things you guys probably see in the audience here is we've spoken to a lot of people outside of the US the last 3 weeks or so. One thing that's really unique is being in the United States, being in cities like San Francisco or New York, that's there's not a pressure there, but there's an opportunity. I want to talk about that experience at SUNY and Albany and being in New York State. Did you feel like that? And that's kind of getting away from what we're talking about there a little bit, but it's popped in my mind. Did you feel the entrepreneurial spirit around you in that area? I know that's kind of an ethereal question, but.
Yeah, I mean, to some extent you would think so. No, I didn't really. So I grew up on Long Island, the suburbs, where pretty much everyone had a 9-to-5 type job. My father ended up taking early retirement when I want to say Bell Atlantic took over NYNEX, and these were the baby bells of AT&T that ended up merging and forming Verizon. So Verizon was started as a local New York, New England, and then East Coast, and then of course they're national, maybe even global. And so they're rivaling AT&T, and kind of goes full circle because the whole point was breaking up AT&T's monopoly. Nevertheless, my dad during that time took an early retirement. And looking back now, it was really early. I want to say he was in his early 50s. Back when I was young, that was really old. Now that I'm middle-aged, 50 isn't old at all. And so looking back, I go, yeah, of course he had a second career as an independent management consultant, because he's not, he wasn't financially well off, let alone, bored with life to retire at age 50. So from that aspect, that was the only kind of example of entrepreneurship in my very young days. Otherwise, there was really not much. My family started becoming very active in different network marketing companies. And so network marketing also created a model of entrepreneurship, but can be a little bit different from what most people expect as a small business. So understanding the power of community, the power of relationships, the power of networking, the power of creating an organization, I did get that modeling after network marketing companies. But outside of that, there was no cultural pressure. There was no peer pressure. I don't belong to a peer circle where everyone's talking about different business ideas or side hustles or things like that. I never grew up like that. I think to this day, I'm the only entrepreneur in my friend circle. Luckily, 2 or 3 of my friends actually work at the company. But when we get together, we're never talking about business. Like, I don't want to turn into a business meeting. I'm always thinking about business, but I won't do that to them. But for me, that's all I'm thinking about, even at the party. But I'm not going to ruin their party by talking about work, as it were. So there was no cultural aspect in that sense of where this was a kind of a norm thing to do. I didn't, as much as I come from an immigrant family, it wasn't an entrepreneurial immigrant family in that traditional sense.
Hey, I really appreciate the answer there, because you might that might be just something that a limiting belief or wrong belief I have, where it's like, oh, this person's in this city, everyone's doing this, but no.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's definitely more normal, so to speak, in New York City or San Francisco, et cetera, to have a startup and to be tech oriented. I think, okay, fair. But there can also be kind of a rolling of the eyes where it's very stereotypical. It's like, of course you are. Of course you're working. You have a tech startup, and almost not take it seriously because it's almost a thing to do. And that's what everyone does. And it's where you go to Hollywood, of course, everyone wants to be the next big actor. When you go to Silicon Valley, of course, you want to have the next tech unicorn. Or here in the city, in New York City, of course, you work in finance. And maybe that's not special enough. And so for me, I am rather special in the sense of having a business where a lot of people now I'm very well connected in the business community of New York City. So from that aspect, I'm surrounded by a lot of small business owners and entrepreneurs and people who do public speaking and podcasts and things, but that's not typical. I always have to remind myself, I'm in a bubble. Most people don't see the same type of Facebook ads that I do because they're not in my world.
Right. This is a very unique way of putting it. Most people don't see, that's the title. Most people don't see the Facebook ads I do. And so
because it's very to some extent it's very disheartening, because I click yes and whatever to every competitor and quasi marketing oriented that's not even my competitor but maybe will be a vendor or a referral source. And so that's all I see. And I love commercials, talking about growing up. I watched infomercials. I love Ron Popeil. I love all that stuff. I love that. And I wish I got more into direct sales and direct marketing. I didn't, and I wish I did, honestly. So now when I see Russell Brunson's of the world, and literally him, and kind of seeing how, if anyone knows who he is, and he really got brought up in the direct marketing channel. So he's kind of that from the age of infomercials to what it is today. And I find that extremely remarkable. And to some extent, there's a jealousy because I was that kid who was into infomercials, but I never got groomed or never groomed myself. So I think that was a missed opportunity. But my point, going back to the figurative Facebook ads, it can be very disheartening because all I see are, people who are a little bit further than I am in business. And I'm like, man, I'm a small fish in a very big pond. And then I have to then talk myself off the ledge, so to speak, and go, you know what? People aren't seeing these ads. They don't know who these guys are. I live in this bubble where these are the people I know. But if I walk down the street and mention those names, they don't know who they are. If I go to my clients, they don't know who they are. And so they are not really competitors. So maybe that's a good thing, where it's like, yeah, I can learn from people who are a couple of chapters ahead, but I'm not really competing with them. I'm not really taking business away from them, and they're not taking business away from me, but rather I'm learning from them, and maybe one day they'll learn from me. And so that's a productive way of looking at the Facebook ads.
That's a really powerful mindset, because you can see how you can turn, a lot of it just is how you look at things.
Yeah.
The knowledge of how to look at things in a positive manner. And that's one thing I want to pivot to now, right? Because we talk about that passion as in, bringing as a video social success you have there, the community you surround yourself in New York City, the work that did pay off to be in this position. Now you can look at some of the struggles in this position, like, hey, I could have done this X, Y, and Z, but the right mindset, that's okay. But this wasn't your first business, right? This one's obviously succeeding and very, very great and happy for that. What were some of the struggles from, working with your dad? We might have not touched on this. You can kind of get into your management consulting experience with your dad, but the struggles that you saw between that and today, like what are the ones you look back at as like the most formative even?
So, generationally, I think there was an age, obviously the age difference. And because of that, the generation gap in mindset, I was a lot more bold and brash in my younger days compared to how I am now, and definitely compared to how my father was. So we had different working styles where I wanted to be a lot more bold, a lot more brash, and maybe that could have been a detriment. I don't know. And I had to be tempered a lot, and that got annoying very quickly, where I just wanted to do my own thing. And it goes back to that entrepreneurial spirit, where we consider ourselves partners, but just by nature of him being my dad, he's the boss. And he's the one who had the experience. Back then, I didn't have the gray hair, so no one really trusted my insight, because it was not based on experience or expertise or anything. It was just my ideas, and I wanted to go out and prove them. And to some extent, I did prove them, and some I didn't prove. But I would say that was a main aspect that I wanted to it wasn't a good fit in that sense, where I wanted to do it my own way and figure it out my own way, from pricing strategy, of naming products, creating different things. So from that aspect, you have to find the right fit. For example, Mark and I have been business partners longer than I was business partner with my dad. Trying to remember, it's been over 15 years now where Mark and I are business partners, and we see eye to eye on most things. I'll have to sell him on an idea first, or sometimes just go ahead and do it, because it's like, look, it's my business. I can go ahead and do it and prove it to some extent. I have a very big philosophy of make a mess first, then clean it up. And he is my COO. And so as the chief operating officer, his job very often is to clean up my mess. So I say that, I said it to him, so I'm not saying anything here behind his back. He can easily watch this. And he knows that, and we chuckle over that. But there's this level of frustration that he will share, because it's not always good. We're literally living that right now, because we ended up launching a third aspect of our company around video interview podcasts. And so now we run more than a dozen podcasts for our clients. But I started that on my own with our clients, just kind of forging and saying, I know this is the right thing to do for our clients. I know the right model. I want to prove it enough where I made a mess first. And now we're pretty systematic at this point, but we will be even better in a couple of months in terms of how clockwork it is internally. For our clients, it's awesome. For our clients, they get the results. It's very much, there's this metaphor of, you see this graceful duck swimming, floating on the water, and all we see is this graceful float, but there's a whole lot of craziness happening underwater. And and same thing, like the back of the house of the restaurant, there's a whole lot of craziness happening in the kitchen, but outside it's very serene and beautiful with candlelit beauty. So it's a lot of candlelit beauty for our clients, but there's a lot of duck swimming and kitchen craziness internally, which will get better. But we're growing fast. It's a fast growing world. It's getting a lot of results for our clients. Our clients are referring us to others because they're raving fans of just even this new model. So from that aspect, back to kind of the ups and downs, you have to find the right fit for the partner. I mean, it is very much like a marriage. You have to know what you're getting into, And it won't always be rosy, even if it's the right fit. People have different personalities, and we know each other's strengths. I tend to be more the idea guy, which can be visionary or whatever highfalutin word you want to use, but I tend to be more that vision guy. And Mark tends to be more the systems guy, and much more, how I think of it as kind of creating the bureaucracy, which can be a negative way of saying it, but is a positive of systems and processes. And if anyone knows anything about scaling and providing great customer value and service, it's all about internal processes and systems. And so for me, if I didn't have Mark and the rest of the team, the rest of the staff to create the processes and systems, my ideas would inflate and deflate very quickly. It would basically fall into itself, and we trip over ourselves, and we wouldn't provide good value, and people would resent us, and we'd get a bad reputation. And, the cheapest form of marketing, the most effective form of marketing is word of mouth. It's raving fans. And so we put a lot into our clients to turn them into raving fans, because when someone goes to their buddy and say, you got to work with video socials, this is absolutely awesome, that's all they need to hear. It beats any Facebook ad. It beats any kind of cold email. It beats any even using content marketing, which is our game. The word of mouth for us is extremely important. Content essentially feeds word of mouth. So from that aspect, I guess it's partnership and finding that. And I believe in having partners. I can't imagine running things solo. I'm not a fan of running things solo. I think there's way too much weight on my shoulders. I don't have all the answers, even if I think I know it all. I know I don't, at least. And so that's maybe another tidbit, that don't try to just go it on alone. There's a lack of time leverage where you're on vacation or you're sick. That's it. Everything comes to a grinding halt. You have to have other people involved. I'm not a big fan of the solo partnership or solo business even. It doesn't need to be an employee model, but there has to be a team effort. Hopefully Alex comes back. I'll stick around until then. This could be edited out, or I could keep on rambling. I don't actually know what Alex didn't hear me say, so I might have to repeat things. So hopefully he comes back on. You're back. So what was the last thing you heard?
Oh, man, I'm so sorry about that. Is there like a double? No, I have no idea. It's like Zoom dropped or something.
I was fine, but I don't know when you cut out.
I've got my notes here. Thank God I took taking notes. Let's see here. Offering messes. You were finishing up. The last words I heard were you saying the partnership. Don't worry, we're going to edit all this. You know it's recording, so it's it's cool.
Well, I'm sure the recording has it. So
yeah.
So I hope you enjoy the show.
Well, man, I guess you're talking about the idea guy, systems guy. I might not have heard exactly the last word you said, but I was taking notes on
I was kind of talking about the power of partnerships and having that, because it's hard for someone to play both roles.
Yeah.
I tend to be more that sales professional, bringing in the business. I'll bring in the client, but then very quickly hand off to either Stacy internally or Mark. Stacy's one of my longtime friends, and very much kind of third wheel in a good way. And so I'll need someone else to kind of continue the race, grab the baton and continue the relay, because I got to go on to the next potential client or the next referral relationship. So I'm there beating the bushes, bringing in business. And so I need that team, that staff to really take over. And so I think that's vital, even if it's a software driven or tech oriented, because we have a software aspect of our company, but then there's still demos to be made, tutorials to be done, client service, and it's hard to make time for everything. So ask me your questions. I'll allow you to lead.
No, this is great. And again, we're going to edit this, so that's kind of catching me up. What I'm going to do is, here is I want to, instead of talking about you said the messes you've made along the way, but you clean them up as you go. There's no car crash moment I don't see in your business where you're I invested this money totally wrong.
Well, you don't hear about it. Yeah, I'm not going to post about it on LinkedIn. So there is. So
Okay.
I don't want to reveal too much about it because, I may pick up the idea later, but I was working on basically a testimonial product. It was a SaaS, it was a software product, and it was basically around collecting testimonials. And I still believe in the concept because, again, it kind of checks off all the boxes of that we want for our clients, where it's word of mouth driven, but using technology, relationships and technology. And, poured a good amount of money in doing software development, poured about a good amount of time. So it was very distracting, which opportunity cost can be even more expensive than hard dollars. So from that aspect, that was, and unfortunately, there's a variety of reasons why I think it didn't succeed. I think the number one was the lack of community and the lack of implementation support for the customers or clients of that SaaS. And I think for our types of clients, they need a lot more hand-holding. And either the hand-holding is peer support or it's a done-for-you system by us. Either way, that wasn't there in that product. At least that's not how we envisioned it. I really got enamored by kind of the unicorn SaaS, product-led growth, where the product essentially sells itself because it's so awesome. And it did not. And I was just not used to a product-led growth approach, which is kind of the whole concept of PLG. I wasn't really used to that. I wasn't used to kind of a lower cost model where it's dozens of dollars instead of hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars. I'm more used to hundreds of dollars, if not thousands of dollars. And so for each sale, for it to only be a couple of dozen, it's hard to, it needs to accumulate. Yeah. I wasn't really knowing what the customer acquisition cost was to really justify it. I just wasn't used to it. I'm not a typical tech entrepreneur. I'm more of a service professional, and that's who our clients are. So because I didn't know the model well enough, and I didn't have VC money to burn, literally and figuratively, that it became onerous real quickly, and I had to kind of shrink back and kind of figure out a different and a better model. And so, long story short, because of that, it was right around the time when video was starting to really become mainstream over social media, and that's how Video Socials was born. And a lot of correct
right there. So personally, I'm going to keep, I appreciate you sharing with me. I'm probably not going to put that out just because it's going to affect the flow of the conversation. But when you got the Video Socials right there, that's what I want to talk about now. So I'll stop it here because I'm going to tell Lisa needs to cut here. And so those who are watching this or hearing it on the podcast, you might have saw that there was a little cut right there, a little technical difficulties, but Vikram has been very gracious and continuing with us. I want to thank you again, Vikram.
Yeah, so with Video Socials, our clientele has really stayed consistent in terms of who they are. Our main topic clients are basically boutique law firms. So if you know that attorney down the street where she has her shingle up and she's a solo, or maybe she's in a small partnership with 2 or 3 folks working in her office, that's our client. And so maybe not literally, but I hope so literally. So he may have 2 or 3 partners and maybe 10 attorneys working for him. That's our kind of client. So law firms by far are our best type of clients. And they are very similar in a model the way consultancies work. With consultants and coaches, financial advisors, accountants, very similar model where essentially they get their primary source of business are word of mouth referrals. For lawyers, very, very much from other attorneys, especially if you're not used to kind of how that works. Think of doctors, how specialized they are, and that they get referrals from other physicians. And that we have that, say, the family doctor who's sort of a generalist, but knows that he or she's not a specialist. So they're not trying to be a specialist. So they may be the quarterback, so to speak, and they will then refer you to a specialist. And one specialist may refer to another specialist. And so goes the game in a good way or a bad way. And likewise in the legal world. And so lawyers are great referral sources for other lawyers. And so for us to kind of hook into that, and so for one attorney client to be a raving fan to another attorney client is very natural because they're constantly comparing notes of what works, what doesn't work, who should you work with, who should you not work with, why does this work? And they're constantly comparing notes because they're not competitors. One's a personal injury attorney, another is a real estate lawyer. They can refer to each other, but they're not doing each other's work in any way. Accountants are a little bit different. There's a little bit more of an overlap. So accountants, lawyers, boutique financial advisors, coaches, those are our world. And so our focus is on their word of mouth referrals, but using content as the vehicle towards that. So you can use content in a variety of ways, for search engine optimization, for example. SEO is helpful. Everyone likes to rank high on Google. It's nice, but that's the yellow pages. And that's really not where our clients are getting their clients from. They're getting it through, again, word of mouth. It's having their clients share their content, having their referral relationships share their content. And so it's very important to rank high on social media for their circle of influence, way more than random hashtags or random SEO. It's focused word of mouth. And so we have one aspect of our company focused on written articles. We have another aspect of our company focused on video blogging and making sure our clients are doing that consistently. And we have now a newer segment of our company focused on video interview podcasts, all based around the concept of how do you create content that other people want to share.
Excellent. And so for those notes there, so understanding you've got a high net promoter score, right? And the strategies that you've used and you put in place to do that. And so we might want to get into that a little bit more. And I think it's very interesting. Some tactics maybe other people might follow there. But understanding that law firms are high enough ROI producing, agency type where our business model where they can go done for you, right? Accountants, white collar, typically,
Sure.
They're not going to, the types of customers you deal with, how much are they really involved in implementation, or even do they even care? Like, how do you kind of, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, they care. They care. I mean, it's their reputation, right? So they have to be very involved in the actual content creation. And that's always been the sticky point. There are plenty of agencies that'll, kind of hire ghostwriters and put articles together in article libraries. And, there's value there to some extent. But, for us, it's way more important for our clients' personal brand, their thought leadership, their subject matter expertise to come through. For themselves, that's what they want. First of all, they want their own personality and thought leadership to come through. They want to brand themselves as an expert. And I think for people, they want to get to know you through your content. And so with Phone Blogger, which is one of our services, we interview our clients over the phone. It's a 4-minute interview, turns into a written article. But it's their words, it's their personality, it's their expertise. We're their editors. To some extent, we're the copy editors, but we don't use that phrase because it's not only just a marketing tool. It's not a lead magnet. It is an informative article in and of itself, which could also be a lead magnet. And so blog articles are helpful, but it's their personality, it's their words. And from an ego standpoint, they want that. Substantively, it's a way for them to differentiate themselves from being just commodity articles. And then there's an ethical obligation as well. There are legal ethics that prohibit them from using ghostwriters, et cetera, in some capacity. And so we're not ghostwriters in that sense. Our clients are the authors. In video blogging, very much so. Like, they are the ones on the webcam. They are the ones sharing it, and getting them comfortable and used to it and personable has been a challenge. The only good thing to come out of all this COVID stuff is that our clients are very comfortable being on Zoom. It's what they do all day long, whether they want to or not. It is what it is. And I think forevermore is going to be part of the meeting landscape. Maybe they want to do more in-person meetings, but they will definitely be comfortable on Zoom as well. And so we use Zoom as well to create our video blogging clubs, because we need them as the thought leader, as the subject matter expert, to be on camera for those 2 to 3 minute short videos. And then when it comes to video interview podcasts, they are the talk show host, which is a lot of fun. They are basically playing the role of a talk show host, interviewing potential clients or referral relationships, much like what we're doing here, and having a show. And as you know, Alex, it can be very fun and interesting and engaging to chat with other people and to basically have them on your platform. And so for us to turn our clients into celebrity CEOs and talk show hosts, there's definitely an ego aspect involved. There's a fun aspect involved. But there's an ROI. There is an actual productive use, because I'm looking forward to sharing this episode to my circle of influence. So thank you again, Alex, for having me on your show, because it makes me look good and feel good to be promoted by you and on your platform. And in a very similar way, it's the same thing for our clients. They are creating a platform of promotion for their referral relationships, for their potential clients, for their influencers. And so from that aspect, for us to do it for them, well, we handle everything, all the stuff that you had to do. We basically do for our clients, where we're scheduling the guests, we do the intake form, we do all the audio video production. So someone's backstage, making sure all the tech works, doing all the posting and the distribution, all the stuff that, and it's not like that they're highfalutin and too good to do it. It's just that it's, the amount of work it takes. They just wouldn't do it otherwise. It's not as if they're too good to do it. They just, don't know how to. They're not necessarily tech savvy, or they're very busy. And it may not be the best use of their time. And it's a lot less expensive for them to pay us than their hourly rate. And they're able to focus on the fun part, the part that you like to do, the part that I like to do. And so that's another aspect of our company. So they are very much involved in the content creation aspect of it, but the implementation, in the sense of actually getting the content out there, someone else can do. That's what our agency does. And we say you don't want your agency to reply to things, like we won't respond to things, we won't comment on other people's social media posts, et cetera. And some agencies I know do. We shy away from that, because that's all. There's ethical issues of are we getting the comment correct, and B, now we're pretending to be that person in a very one-on-one setting. And these are, almost by definition, they're most important, at least internet relationships, they're referral relationships. And so we don't want to come in between them and their VIP relationships. Rather, we want to create a VIP platform, literally video interview podcast platform.
I love that. So that's going to segue into the amazing offer you brought today, talking about the VIP. But I want to make sure we end on that. That way it's in people's minds,
Sure.
and be actionable. So before that, one question I always want to ask as we wrap up here is, the amazing story, from selling candy to really successful entrepreneur there.
Sure.
In why. I want to ask you, the next 12 months, you've done a lot, you've seen a lot, you're doing a lot. What are those goals in, say, the next year that you want to, really tackle? So I can hold you accountable when I follow up with you.
Yeah, fair enough. So right now, on average, we're bringing about 3 or 4 new. So the fastest growing aspect of our company, right? There's phone blogger, written articles, there's video socials, our clubs, which is an awesome community. People should come as a guest and kind of even check it out for their own or for someone they know. And then the third aspect is VIP, or video interview podcasts. And because it's new, we started VIP in December of 2021, so just this past January, basically. And we're bringing on about 3 or 4, sometimes 4 or 5 new clients every month. So for me, it's like, all right, how's that trajectory going to continue? So just mathematically, if we stay the same, which would not be that great, because it should be up and to the right in terms of new client acquisition. But let's say if we just stay at the same, let's say 5 as a nice round number, because that's the math I'm going to be able to do. 12 times 5, 60. So this time this year, we should, and we're already running around more than a dozen, so like 15, let's say. So we should be basically in the ballpark of running more than 75 video interview podcasts. At that point, that's a radio station. Like that's like hours of content every day. Yeah. Not that people are doing daily podcasts. People are doing like weekly podcasts or bi-weekly, every other week podcasts. But that's a treasure trove of content. We are basically our own Apple Podcasts or Spotify at that point. So it's at that point that we can start going into the world of sponsorships and advertising. So in a year from now, which we don't broker advertising for our clients right now, but we will inevitably, especially when we're basically running 75 shows. In aggregate, that will be a great listener base. Maybe each one show may not be all that impressive in terms of listener base, but across, and our clientele have a very Similar, yeah, exactly. They're lawyers, they're accountants, they're coaches, they're consultants. So while they may be in a very different worlds, one's a special needs attorney, the other is a life coach, but there's some synergy. There's definitely overlap. It's not like we're doing plumbers and restaurants and lawyers where it's like, what? Here it's like we're in a professional services space. So that's numbers where we would be. So we'll see if we hit it, and we should exceed it. And then there's the network effect of that. like what happens once we have that type of a population. And there's a lot of possibility. Our clients already are great guests on one another's shows. They're already collaborators of content and marketing efforts. The whole concept is cross promotion and word of mouth. So our clients are already doing that to a minimal degree, and it'll be that much more multiplied. So it'll be tremendous. I'm really looking forward to it. And then you have other software aspects that we're looking to help our clients, because ultimately we know the model works in terms of how, as a professional who wants a podcast, how they can get an ROI out of it. And we want to be able to really give them that blueprint of going, all right, these are the case studies, which we don't have right now, right? We're pretty new at it. We have the model. We know the model works. They can literally talk to our other clients, which is basically what I do. I say just talk to them and they'll share their experience. They'll be candid. But I'd like to document that and really show, okay, this is literally what it took. How many clients did they get in their first season of 12 episodes? This is what the trajectory is. And, there's going to be some private information that they may not want to share, like literally billable hours and things, but they don't need to share that. Like, all right, the fact that this host, which is our client, got a client, well, as an attorney, when you got one client, it more than paid for the cost of producing that first season. So it's a no-brainer. And that's our whole point with our clients, that they get a client out of that first season. Season 2 is paid for. Let's just create the engine. And this isn't a direct marketing channel, so it isn't so straightforward where you make 100 calls and you get a client. It's not so straightforward, but it's not so esoteric as branding or that fuzzy logic of, you'll get known as an influencer and maybe someone will be attracted to you. It's also not this ephemeral concept either. This is much more closer to a direct marketing channel, because you're, case in point, interviewing referral relationships, influencers, or even potential clients, if that makes sense. And then there can be a follow-up and a post-episode review meeting, as we call it. So to answer your question, that gives some numbers of where we will be in, let's say, it's June, right? So June of 2023. So let's find out.
June 2023. I like it, man. By the way, happy birthday, John North. Today's his birthday. Just I'll even mention the date, 6/3.
Who's John North?
He's an entrepreneur. He's come on the show before, so.
Okay, all right.
I'm really good at
it. I was like, man, I'm just gonna lay it out there that I don't know who John North is. Maybe I should.
Sorry, that's like a superpower. Remembering the dates and things. I'm really good at that.
Okay.
But throwing a wrench. Throwing a wrench in your story there. I really like that, because I like how, not multifaceted, but how many different angles you are. Because I don't want to say like you're too many, but say like the three core offerings you have now, and then the growth that's going to naturally come off of that. I'm very interested to see the, not gonna call you a radio station, but the growth that you have and the authentic nature of it, because every individual put in the right circumstance with their correct audience will excel in that role, even if it's only 4 hours, like a month, or 4 hours.
It's like it's a numbers game, right? And it's look, if you're talking to, and especially for our type of clients, it is not a churn. It's not a retail store where they need hundreds of people coming in their store or hundreds of phone calls. They're not a Main Street firm in that sense where it's foot traffic. It's a boutique firm. So if they talk to the right type of qualified prospects or potential clients, their closing ratio may only be 30% or 50%, but that's pretty good for them. And so for our type of clients, if we could say, look, you can be now in front of 4 new potential clients every month who want to talk to you, who are excited to share you with their circle of influence. Well, how many of those 4 are going to turn into a client? It's not hard to say one of them will, or out of 12, 1 or 2 will out of 12. I mean, it's not so far-fetched. It's not some weird scheme. And so another analogy I use, and we can close with this, is that, you could take your potential clients or referral relationships out to lunch. You can play golf with them, this is what my life is. This is what my clients do, right? They play golf with them. They go to cocktail parties with their potential clients, with their referral relationships. They take them out to lunch, wine and dine. Or you interview them on your show, your podcast. And they're not mutually exclusive. You can do all 3. But the benefit, that added bonus, is that now you're co-creating content that you have to, so to speak, have to create anyway. You should be on YouTube. You should have content on social. You should have an email newsletter. You should be, putting posts on your website. And you know what? So should they. And the bane of their existence is the bane of your existence, of this hamster wheel of having to constantly create content. So if you're now creating content for someone else to share, well, you're checking off a huge annoyance on their to-do list that they're never getting around to, because it's not something that they love doing unless they're like marketing guys like us. Otherwise, they're not doing it. They're not doing something that they know they should do. It's not urgent, but it's important. But nothing bad happens if they don't do it today. It's like not going to the gym. Nothing happens. But over a period of time, I know the effects of not going to the gym every day. Same thing when it comes to not doing content marketing. And so you're co-creating content for your client, your potential client, your referral relationship. They're excited to share that episode with their circle of influence. And so the model works in a very simple way. It's not some weird pie in the sky. And this is why I began where not everything I do has to be so clever and innovative and inventive. Now, sometimes I can use a model that is pretty interesting. I think there's a lot of interest there, but isn't something like brand new that I just concocted out of thin air and said, hey, let's try this idea. We know this works. It's based on proven models of wining and dining and going to play golf. All right, this is just that much better, but even more effective because it's content. Yeah. And it's focused on, say that again?
So it's unique and evergreen,
And it's evergreen, and it's them talking about their business and them sharing it with others and vice versa. So hopefully that helps.
Man, you said something there. I want to really maybe stop and put it down, right? Obviously, most people don't see the Facebook as they do. That's great. That was funny. But also, content marketing is going to the gym. You can avoid it a couple of days, may miss a month. Whew. But it's going to add up if you don't.
And then of course it's the atomic habits concept, or the doubling a penny every day concept of you do a little bit every day and it also adds up. So the converse can also be in a good way, that you don't have to do a lot. You can just do a little every day or a little every week, and that can also add up in a good way.
Let's talk about that first atomic habit, or that first investment. I think you've got a special offer today. You're putting together that VIP experience. You want to talk about that and what people who are in the audience who have connected with your message, are interested in what you're talking about, how they can, take advantage of that and get connected?
Yeah, sure. We're starting to really document the process, not internally of how we help our clients, but also the process of what our clients go through to get the return on investment. It's an investment of money because they're paying us, but it's also an investment of their time. And as much as we've distilled it to basically 30 minutes of their time, that can be quite expensive. It's hard to find 30 minutes of time on a week-to-week basis, but we make sure that the stage is set for you. You just show up at showtime and everything is done for you. But we have to make sure that we can prove this. And so we've started putting together, all right, what are we seeing as kind of the ingredients of success? So I created a video book called The Top 7 Mistakes That You Must Avoid for the Fastest ROI from Your Podcast. It could be a mouthful. Top 7 mistakes you must avoid for the fastest ROI from your podcast. And the concept here is going through each one of these ingredients of what are we seeing, kind of reading the tea leaves of how are our clients finding success. You have a show, I have a show. My show is about to start in about 10 minutes, where I interview other podcast hosts and we learn from each other and I learn from them. And it's called Why We Podcast. And it's basically around these concepts of how do they benefit from a podcast? How does their podcast benefit others, their audience, their clients, their guests? And it goes into not only just the podcast ROI. I think ROI can be seen as obviously financial, and I do mean financial, but there are other benefits. There are other fulfilling aspects of hosting a show. But very much I mean the return on investment, dollars and cents. And there are definite mistakes that people make. I think for a lot of people start a show and they want to interview interesting people and they want to have interesting conversations, but they forget how are they really using and utilizing the time with the guest in the best way. Because the guests are the lowest hanging fruits, the quickest way, the fastest way to return on investment. And that's what we talk about in the video book. What is the guest results formula? What is that process like, where you starts with having the right premise for the show, the right guest criteria, the right structure for the guest to go through, and then even a follow-up sequence where it's not about pitching the guest. It's not about try and do a bait and switch where every guest is a potential client or prospect. There are more elegant ways, but one way or another, that's the fastest route to monetization and ROI is through the captive audience of your guests, and knowing that's a win-win, that you're also promoting your guests to your circle of influence. And that's what we go through in the video book. Your listeners, your viewers can go to videosocials.vip. So not videosocials.com, not videosocials.net, which is our main website. But for this video book, go to videosocials.vip for Video Interview Podcast and grab the free video book.
That's right. Socials.vip will be linked below, along with how to get in contact with Vikram and connect with social media. As we wrap up here, Vikram, I want to thank you for coming on our show today. And I always want to give our guests the last word. If there's any piece of entrepreneurship wisdom you want to share, what would that be as your closing bit there?
Find a way to get started. Some people talk about minimum viable product, MVP. Some people call it a side hustle. Get started. Take on one client, prove it. Maybe it's pro bono, maybe it's not, but just start to whatever extent. It doesn't need to be as elegant as you intend it to be. Paul Graham in the Silicon Valley world and Web 2.0 world talks about do things that don't scale, knowing that there will be a scalable model later, but do the real things, create the raving fans, because if you can make an impact on one person, that one person turns to 2, 4, 8, etc. That's the place to start, as opposed to being an armchair entrepreneur and sitting there and creating the very perfect business plan and business model. But it's not about perfectionism or perfection. It's I think there's another phrase, right? The enemy of the enemy of the great is the good. I forget what the phrase is.
Enemy of the good is the or something like that.
Yeah, you could edit that part out. I call it armchair entrepreneurs, or wantrepreneurs is another disparaging phrase. Just get that. Just start doing it. Start talking to people. Don't be afraid of people stealing your idea. People aren't going to steal your idea. Yeah, be careful. I'm not going to talk about all my crazy ideas on a podcast because I don't know who's listening. But when you're talking to your family and friends and you're talking, they're not doing it. They're not doing it. You're barely doing it. So it's like, it's your idea. You're loving it. You're thinking about it day and night, and you're not doing it. So why do you think they're going to do it? It's not their baby. So start small and start doing it and let it blossom, because it's the little things every day, and don't wait for perfection. I sure don't.
I think that's a perfect finish right there as a capper. Well, this has been another episode of the Startup Secrets Show. Vikram, I want to thank you. My name is Alex Kubey. Until next time.
Thank you.